Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to give you a quick review of the Canon 5D SR. And a lot of what I'm saying here is equally applicable to the Canon 5DS as well. These are, of course, the 50.6 megapixel monsters from Canon, and in a couple of previous episodes I've covered both the overall build, functionality, handling, design. You can see that episode here, and I really break down the feature set. But to sum that up, know that this is mostly the same body as the 5D Mark III, with just a few very minor modifications, mostly about improving stability to help to reduce vibrations. And so, for the most part, it's very, very similar to the 5D Mark III. In another episode, I talked about the pros and the cons of 50 megapixels, and that's really what this camera is all about. And so there are some kind of expected downsides and upsides to 50 megapixels, and perhaps some unexpected upsides and downsides to both of those. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at that. If you've got time, I would recommend that you take a look at the full review of the 5D SR. In that episode, I'm able to answer a lot more of the questions around the overall design of this camera, and I think that it may make more sense to you overall. But to sum up all of that, as I've mentioned, this is basically the overall body of the 5D Mark III, and in many ways it is the same autofocus system. That's a 61 AF point autofocus system. It's highly customizable. It's got a lot of different case settings that you can set up, and a lot of ability to customize and to make it work for you. And the autofocus system is excellent in the 5D SR. It actually is a step beyond the 5D Mark III in that it also combines in the new, more highly advanced metering system that comes from the 7D Mark II, and thus it has improved face tracking and will work a little bit better in AF servo mode. The step back from the 5D Mark III is that the 5D SR only has 5 frames per second as opposed to 6, and its buffer is going to fill up in about half the amount of frames, around 14, compared to the 30 plus of the 5D Mark III when you're shooting at raw sizes. Of course, it is moving more than twice the amount of information through the pipeline, and so it really does fairly well considering how much info is being used. The overall image quality, of course, it's a massive amount of resolution that's unmatched by any other current full-frame DSLR 35mm camera. And so it certainly has a ton of applications for that massive amount of resolution. The image quality is very good overall. But do note that it's not quite as good as the 5D Mark III, and in particular the Canon 6D when it comes to either the noise level or the high ISO performance. It has a more limited native ISO range of 100 to ISO 6400 compared to the ISO 100 to 25,600 of the 5D Mark III. And even in its expanded settings, it can only go to ISO 12,800. And you're going to find that at ISO 6400, there's already a pretty significant amount of noise that really you can only improve by downsampling the images in post-processing to reduce the visibility of all of that noise. And so for those of you that shoot in low light situations, it may not be as good a choice. And of course, if you're a sports shooter, that more limited buffer and lower frame rate may make it not the camera for you either. But if you need massive amounts of resolution, the good news is that this camera does a very good job of actually producing, and it just works all around. The autofocus works well, the image quality is very good, and I particularly like the fact that you've got a lot of great settings for managing that amount of resolution. You don't want to shoot at 50 megapixels all the time, and frankly, there's very few people that need to shoot at that kind of setting all the time. But you've got a medium raw setting of 28 megapixels, which really is kind of a sweet spot for me, and it works really well in that regard. You've also got a number of JPEG options that allow you to shoot at a variety of settings along the way, which makes the resolution very manageable. And so it's nice to have it on tap when you need it, and then to be able to shoot at more moderate settings when you don't. And so if you're looking for a high megapixel camera, the overall ergonomics and the build of this, it's 5D Mark III. It's excellent. and probably better than most of the other options out there. But if you don't really need 50 megapixels, there is little other reason to move to this, even if you're shooting a 5D Mark III, or even choosing between a 5D Mark III and the 5D SR. In some ways, it's not as good, well, I should say in many ways, it's not as good as a video camera. It takes some steps back in that regard. And of course, it's not quite as versatile or flexible as the 5D Mark III overall. But if you need 50 megapixels, of course, it is the only and the best option. So I think Canon has done a good job of building this camera, but just recognize it's not for everyone. So only you can answer the question, do I need 50 megapixels? If you do, I recommend the 5D SR. If you don't, buy something else. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. You can see my full written review in the comment section down below, as well as an image gallery of lots of photos from this bad boy. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and